very end of the VIMIAC conference in Melbourne, staged by the Victorian Mental Illness Awareness Council, and I have here Indigo Daya, who has played a big role here on many fronts. But first, I get you to introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Hi, Mary. Who am I? I'm Indigo. I'm the Strategic Project Manager at VIMIAC, and I've also got a role as Consumer Academic at the University of Melbourne.
Fantastic. Now, you were instrumental in the conference declaration here. Can you talk about where it came from, how you did it, and what it is? There you go, 3 questions in one.
Sure. So the declaration, I've just got to say, it's a wonderful project. I've just found it very exciting to work on. And what it is it's advocacy. It's a part of our ongoing systemic advocacy for a better mental health system, for the things that we want and need as people with lived experience, but it's a different approach. So traditionally we advocate, at VIMIAC we've advocated against things. We don't want seclusion, we don't want restraint, we don't want sexual violence, all these things that hurt us. And this time we've flipped it around and we've said, okay, let's just stop and think about what is it that we do want. What would it look like if all those things were gone in a perfect world? What would be the places and the services that we would go to? Who would the people be that we'd want to go to for support? What would we do? What things would be healing and helpful? What would society be like? So these really big dreams, and that's what we're shooting for. So we're not going to stop advocating against some of the really terrible ways that people are hurt in mental health services, but we want to do that with both sides. We need to stop this, but this is what we need to create. And the more that we create the dreams that are in the declaration, the less we're going to be doing the things that hurt people.
And is it because it's strength-based and it's better for people to think about what could be, it creates hope, or is it a way of messaging that people outside of people who run the system need to hear? What's the motivation?
Yes, I think it's probably all of those things. It is, as someone who's been facilitating the development of the declaration, but I'm just a facilitator. It's, this is the dreams of over 190 people and counting now. I've seen for myself, but for all of the people involved, it's been a really motivating, powerful, special kind of experience to stop and say, oh, normally we're speaking about terrible ways that we've been hurt. We're reflecting on really painful memories, and this is dreaming talk. This is visioning and imagining, and so that process is really special. It does open up hope, not for everyone. We've had lots of people involved who've been very cynical, and fair enough, because I reckon I'm made up of 80% cynicism and 20% hope, and that shifts. And I get that. It's reasonable to be cynical of the mental health system. But it's hopeful. I think it is also easier to hear, but I think the two of them fit together. I think it's a sensible approach, and that there are many people out there who can't understand that it would be possible to have a mental health unit where we didn't lock people into a seclusion room. There was a keynote speaker at a conference a couple of years back who stood up, a really senior person in mental health, and said, I don't believe we will ever get rid of seclusion. And she is so wrong. She's completely wrong, and she's got no hope for that because she can't see what the future would be like. So we have to describe where we're going.
And what were some of the key messages that came through? And there were many, and you've beautifully...
so many.
Yeah, but they're beautifully put together as graphics.
Thanks.
But what were some of the ones that stood out for you?
What stood out? So many. I was joking this morning, I feel like a human sieve, and all of these dreams have been passing through me as I've been pulling them all together. And I feel really connected to all of them. They're so special. But I was struck by how strong the theme of nature was when we asked what kind of places and services. Because at the moment we have, GP clinics and psych hospitals, not much else is coming to mind. There are other things, but, very medical health system places. And so many people, when we asked what places, didn't say that. They said nature, trees, lawns, flower beds. And so that was really powerful, and that's a great and wonderful challenge to think about in terms of places. When we asked what kind of people, that was also really special. So every single kind of mental health professional, social worker, OT, nurse, psychiatrist, they were all in there. But none of those were anywhere near the top of the people that we were dreaming of. The two kinds of roles that people dreamed about were peer workers and therapists. And I was really struck that they are the two roles that get the least funding and have the least presence in our mental health system. And they're the ones that people want the most. So we really need to completely flip it. And there was I thought it was a rather fabulous example of how diverse people's needs are, that the number of people who said, in my dream, there's absolutely psychiatrists. My psychiatrist is great and they've really helped me. The same number of people said, what I really need is a yoga instructor, because yoga has really helped my healing and been powerful. And I just thought, wow, that's phenomenal, because psychiatry, yoga instructors, they're certainly not seen in the same way in mental health. But people are telling us, we have really different ways of recovering and healing, and what we need is different. We need to respect that. So can I share one more, or is that too much? I'm just going on and on and on. The other area I loved them all really, but the biggest group of dreams was, what is it that actually helps us? What actions and supports and processes do we need with those people in those places? And the big two were groups and therapy, were really common, as was listening and compassion, which are wonderful. And I said to the minister this morning, I totally get that people want listening, but I'm also sad that we have to dream of that, because surely we should have people who know how to listen to us already. And that's not hard. It shouldn't be hard to bring about. If there are mental health educators out there listening to this, what are you doing to make sure people know how to listen to us? Because that's what people want, along with compassion, more than anything else. Not you coming in and formulating and analysing and fixing and diagnosing and prescribing. Listening is healing in and of itself, as was art, music, political action, animals. And yes, some people said medication is really important for me, for sure. The same number of people said meditation is what's really helpful for me. So that's another just great example of what we need is choice. And that was, if we had to pick one word that described the whole declaration of dreams, it would be choice. That we need many, many, many more options, and the right to choose what out of that is right for us. That would be a wonderful societal response to what we need.
Now, this was very strategic of you, of course, because you presented it to the minister, not for no reason. It's really interesting to hear your message for educators, service providers. And we have got the Royal Commission into Mental Health in Victoria handing down its interim finding next month. Mm-hmm. Is that who it's aimed at?
Yes, plus, I would say. We have an extraordinary number of inquiries and royal commissions that are related to mental health, including the Victorian Mental Health Royal Commission. And this is absolutely aimed at all of those people, but it's also aimed at people in the sector and in government. As we've said this a number of times at VEMIAC, it's an ongoing concern for many of us that the people who actually use these systems are not being listened to as the most important voice in these spaces. At the very start of the Royal Commission, we expressed great disappointment that there was no consumer commissioner. And from what I've seen, consumers have certainly had some voice in the Royal Commission, but in no way at the level that we should have. Lived experience workers, peer work was the only mental health discipline left out of testimony at the Royal Commission hearings. So we are absolutely not yet fully respected as the people who have the right and the expertise to say what we need. And so it was really important to us in this space of everyone handing down reports and findings and recommendations to say, well, this is actually what matters. You know, we're the people who live it, we're the people who are still living it, or the people who have lived it and come out the other side. And this is what matters. The way that we reflect on and respond to the findings of these other Royal Commissions and inquiries will be absolutely 100% based on how well do they align with our dreams, and if they don't, they're not what we need.
I doubt that you would have had time to read the Productivity Commission report yet, and in 1,200 pages as you were doing this last night.
Not quite today yet.
Are you hopeful that these commissions of inquiry are getting closer?
Oh, that's a tough question, especially on the record.
Say no comment.
I don't know. I really don't know, Murray. There are days where I feel this surge of hope, and I hear things that make me think maybe they're getting it, but probably mostly I sit with some cynicism. I'm hopeful that each of these will get us some small steps, and I think, you know, the pragmatist in me says that's probably the best that we can get out of any of these. I worry often that we might go backwards. I have to say, actually, this is it's a bit unusual for me, but I want to thank Minister Foley for something that he said this morning. It's very rare that I thank a politician. So there you go. But he named something that worries me with the Mental Health Royal Commission. And I hope people don't think what I'm saying is sort of being anti-carer, anti-family, because I've been a carer. I was on the carer pension for my mum. And I have a lot of respect for people in family relationships with us. But I worry greatly when the dominant voice in the lived experience space in advocacy, and it feels like that to me with the Royal Commission, comes from carers and families who are advocating for more restrictive practices. And what I wanted to thank Minister Foley for was acknowledging that we're hearing a lot of voices from family members who are in a really desperate situation, who are feeling desperate, arguing for more authoritarian controlling services, for people like us to be locked up more, to be forced to take medication. And he named that, and he said, that comes from desperation, and we have to acknowledge and understand that desperation, but we cannot go back to doing that to people. And I was pretty blown away, actually, because I've not heard anyone in power name that really tough, tricky dynamic in the mental health policy space before. And it is a really strong tension. And so I'm hopeful that the Royal Commission takes that into account, but I sit with some concern that they won't. So I hope at least we don't go backwards, and I hope we go forwards to some degree.
As Maggie said the other day, not long to wait now to find out, really.
Oh, no.
For the next one.
I didn't answer you at all, did I?
You did completely, but I have one more to throw at you, which is a bit mean considering how busy you've been here. But any big takeaways from the conference, from the speakers or from conversations?
I feel kind of excited about the state of the consumer survivor lived experience movement. I think that would be my takeaway. I mean, I'm always excited about it. I'm a part of it. It's my community, my tribe. But I feel like conversations are becoming more sophisticated and nuanced and powerful and creative. And that signals something important. It feels like this movement is growing in power and influence. And that's probably my takeaway from this conference, which is rather cool.
That is rather cool.
Yeah.
Is there an example of anything that somebody said, or just a general vibe?
It's a general vibe. It's no particular thing, but it feels, when I think of sometimes of big gatherings of us in the past, there's always been strength and power, because we have to, without that, how do we survive the kinds of things that we go through? But it feels more present. at this conference.
What a lovely way to finish. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Murray.